Hello everyone, Dokapon Kingdom Connect makes its entrance to Nintendo Switch this week, but the fact is that this is a remake of a remake. It's part of a series of games that started almost 30 years ago. The year is 1994 and in Japan Dokapon 321 is released for the Super Famicom. Much later a new version sees the light of day, but this time for PlayStation 2 and Nintendo Wii. Apparently Dokapon Kingdom for Wii is a real rarity, this because only a limited number of copies were made, combined with the fact that it was considered to be of good quality. I saw someone selling it on eBay for $3,000, which I think is absolutely insane, but if there is a demand, then why not, I guess. So perhaps it's not entirely strange that we are now getting a new release for the Nintendo Switch, but this time in a new format, with the possibility to play online. However, Nintendo Switch Online is a requirement. In this video we check out how Dokapon Kingdom Connect feels on the Nintendo Switch and if it's worth buying. The price is initially set at $50. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. I review new games every week. This is a game where decision making and strategic choices mixed with a large portion of luck can determine who will emerge victorious. There are slightly different purposes depending on which mode you choose, but generally it's about earning more money than your competitors, conquering as many cities as possible, making it difficult for your opponents, and leveling up your character so that you can handle the game's toughest challenges. In other words, it's about being one step ahead of your opponent, which may be easier said than done. In fact, this game contains so many risks that it's easy to fall behind, but it can also go in another direction when you feel totally invincible. Everything is played out on a game board where, depending on your decisions, you can be richly rewarded or properly punished. But despite the fact that Dokapon Kingdom on the surface looks both cute, colorful and wonderfully cozy, this can be more difficult than you might think. It's not what it seems to be. To become a good player can require a lot of knowledge about the basic aspects of the game. For example, how to fight, how to prioritize your stats, how all items work, and perhaps the most difficult, when to do what. This is a relatively large kingdom consisting of different landscapes. On the one hand, there is an upper world with snow-covered surfaces, forests and environments close to the sea. In contrast to this, you can visit volcanoes and underground cave systems. On the game board you move your character on the marked points, and how many steps you are allowed to take is decided by the number that appears on the spinner. 0 to 6. Here you sometimes have to have luck on your side and get a number that goes in line with your intentions. But there are also special items that allow you to either move several steps or allow you to move freely. A variety of things can happen on the game board. If you end up on a yellow square, you have to fight an enemy, or you might meet someone who either favors you or makes everything much more difficult. For example, the girl who wants to play Rochambeau. Either you win and get a lot of money, or you lose and you basically get robbed. Another example is the robot. If you pay it a sum of money, it will hunt down and eliminate your opponent. In fact, there is a variety of creatures in this game, all of which enrich the experience, to the extent that everything is basically completely unpredictable. You can have the world's best setup, where everything goes perfectly. Then something happens that makes you stand there as a loser. For example, when your opponent becomes a Darkling, whoever is a Darkling gets superpowers and can use them to destroy basically everything you've built. But this is what gives the game a special thrill, that you can't take anything for granted. Even though things sometimes go very well, you can still be defeated. There are also monster squares on the game board. If you end up on this square, you have to fight a much tougher enemy, but you can also battle against your friends and steal their stuff. The treasure chests give you a random item, and the books can generate important brews or cards. On the game board there are also some shops where you can buy magic, items or weapons. It can be beneficial to always be equipped with the best stuff to ensure you give yourself a better chance of winning in battle. Strategically, one's choice is absolutely decisive for how successful one will be. Sometimes you need special items or weapons and shields. Then it can be an advantage to move towards those particular places. Sometimes, on the contrary, you have to fight to prevent your competitors. By choosing the same square as your friend, you can temporarily stop their progress, if you win that is. So let's discuss the special monsters. On the game board you sometimes see purple and red super enemies. These are important to eliminate because you will be richly rewarded. If you win, you conquer a city and get paid well, and as a bonus you get extra experience points. The tougher monsters can offer good resistance, and if you lose, it may be because your character has a low level, therefore one's decisions become important. If you should fight to get experience, or if you should get items and make it difficult for your opponents, and the choices you make can prove to be directly decisive. There is nothing worse than losing a battle against a strong monster. This because the punishment can be relatively severe. You can lose capital and also get to rest a couple of turns, which can give your opponents a big advantage. But since the duels are such a central part of this game, I think there is relevance to discussing how they are designed. You can fight against any of the game's enemies, or against your friends. The duels are turn-based, where you either use magical or physical attacks, or you use a special ability that is linked to your job, but more on the jobs later. When it's time for the opponent to make his choices, the conditions are basically reversed. You can defend yourself with your shield, or use magic, or you can choose to give up in advance. Basically, it's about figuring out how the opponent will act, and then making choices yourself accordingly. For example, if the enemy makes a physical attack, you should defend yourself with your shield, but then the question becomes how to know which attacks the enemy will use. To get a greater understanding, you can press L and R and see how previous fights ended. In this way, you can predict how the enemy will act from now on. The combat system is actually quite simple, and a fight is usually over after 1 or 2 turns, but sometimes you meet opponents who are much tougher, and then the fights can be drawn out. In the game, there is also a job system that can give you new skills. At first, you can only choose between 3 different jobs, but later you can learn new ones. One of the great advantages of jobs is that you gradually learn new skills. For example, that you can heal yourself in battle or strengthen the defensive and offensive abilities. But the fact is that the job system is relatively extensive, because there are, I think, 12 different jobs to learn. The point is that the job system is a dimension of the game that creates a certain dynamic to the gameplay itself, and learning new jobs can have a direct impact on the outcome of battles. In addition, you get bonus money when you master a certain job. I actually have to say that this system is an addition to the game that makes everything more complicated. There are more parameters to keep track of, but I think it also contributes to making the experience entertaining. You can get skills that are very useful. Which brings us to equipment. Basically, there are 3 things to consider: weapons, shields and accessories, and the range of these items is large. In total, there are more than 100 different things to buy or find, and the choice of weapon can be linked to one's job, as you can get a huge damage boost if you choose the right weapon in relation to your profession. You can do 30% more damage, which can make a huge difference in battle. The weapons, shields and accessories also raise or lower one's stats, so sometimes you have to be careful and see what each item actually does. So we have come to the different ways of playing. You can choose story mode. Here you have to help the king and princess with what they ask you to do, but it's really about completing various tasks, opening up new areas, and getting to experience the entire kingdom. It is definitely extensive, and something that can take several hours to complete. Here I also want to mention that you can play against the computer, your friends, or online. The choices you can make before you start are to choose how many players will participate, a maximum of 4 players. Then you choose your entry profession: warrior, magician or thief. You can also decide how smart the computer control players should be. And here I have to say that the computer is very good, at least if you choose normal or sneaky. If you choose weak, I have noticed that it still make a lot of wise decisions and can actually overachieve. So in my opinion, the computer's AI is clearly acceptable and can offer a good challenge. As I said, playing story mode is a relatively long adventure, but there are shorter options. In normal mode, you set how many weeks to play, and the winner is the one with the most money when it's over. In Battle Royale, you can choose Town Race, Kill Race or Shopping Race. In the Town Race, the winner is the one who liberates a particular town. Kill Race focuses on player versus player. Whoever eliminates one's opponents the most times before time runs out wins. Finally, we have Shopping Race. Here you have to give a specific item back to the castle. My conclusion is that there are a lot of different ways of playing that can be interesting for different players. On the one hand, you have the freedom to play with your friends or to play against the computer. which in my opinion works better than expected. The computer can be extremely skilled, but the other thing I want to highlight is the length of time. You can play both long and short matches, whatever suits you best. Later this week I intend to do a follow-up video to solely discuss what it's like to play online, but since I've been playing the game before its release, there hasn't been anyone to play with, but we will see how it works in a few days. Dokapon Kingdom Connect is a game that I think many players can find value in. For one thing, there is the part where you compete against your friends, but it also works great to play alone against a computer. But in order to become good at this game, there is a lot to learn. Otherwise, there is a risk that you will be overrun quite quickly, at least if you meet the computer. But if you meet your friends, a similar principle applies. If you yourself are experienced, it may not be super fun to meet newbies. So maybe it's the case that this game is most fun to play if you meet people who are on the same level, no matter how good or bad you are. The game runs very well on Nintendo Switch, as it generally has a good frame rate. I haven't experienced any crashes or any weird bugs either. In general, this feels like a finished product, but it will be interesting to see how this game works when playing online, if there are enough players to compete against. And on the question of whether the game is worth $50, in my opinion, it's a definitely yes, even without the online mode. This is an entertaining game that can actually be a bit addictive. It can be difficult to turn off the game if you have ended up in a good flow, so I recommend this game. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. Have a nice day. See ya!